And good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid, your midweek edition of the show. Plenty to get to as we hit on the crazy comeback for the New York Knicks last night. We'll break it all down for you, of course, here on the show with Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. What a finish it was. Also, some news from tennis. We'll dive into that as well with the French Open coming this weekend and Wimbledon, of course, in the future. Very latest on the PGA Golf Tour. We'll bring in Brady Cannon from our very own SportsGrid. Sam McQuillan joins us courtesy of Legal Sports Report, and then Dustin Gawker with the very latest on prediction markets as this landscape is ever changing. But as we mentioned, a very big name and arguably the best name currently on the tennis tour, Carlos Alcaraz on Tuesday says he is out from Wimbledon because of his wrist injury that he suffered at the Barcelona Open last month. Alcaraz will also miss the French Open, saying that his recovery is going well, feeling better, but not ready to be able to play. And so he's out from this summer's Wimbledon tournament. So naturally, this gives Jannik Sinner and some others a chance to capture a title. Meanwhile, Rashee Rice apparently is having to learn the lesson the hard way. He has violated his probation and now has been sentenced to 30 days in jail. The Chiefs wide receiver can't participate in OTAs. And even had a cleanup surgery on his knee. He was supposed to miss a couple of months. He says he'll be ready for training camp, but who even knows at this point? The future of Rice cloudy after his suspension and now violation of probation this week. Meanwhile, good news for the New York Yankees. They lost Max Fried, but their replacement's a pretty good one. Garrett Cole's going to return on Friday to the Bombers. Aaron Boone made the announcement. Last game that he pitched was October 30th, 2024. Yes, that's right. It has been a year and a half since we've seen Cole pitch, and he'll do so on Friday night. Also, big news from the NBA before we get to the score last night. Jason Kidd is looking for a new head coaching gig. He's out as Mavericks head coach, and he's going to be paid for several years despite not coaching. His record, how about this? With Dallas, 205 and 205, 205 wins, 205 losses. They have a new president, Masai Ujiri, and he said that he just simply wanted to make a change. Of course, they fired their general manager after trading Luka Doncic last season. All right, now let's get to it. Last night, this was a crazy finish in the NBA, one of the better games we've seen in years. The Knicks were down 22 points. They come all the way back to beat the Cavs in overtime. And by the way, somehow covered the 6.5-point spread. What a bad beat if you had Cleveland yesterday. Analytically, the Cavaliers had a 99.9% chance of winning with 8 minutes to go. But Jalen Brunson said not so fast. He had 38 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Mike Brown and Kenny Atkinson trying to somehow put into words the finish of this one.
I got to give my group credit. They've been resilient all year. And I don't know if I've seen that in a playoff game. I don't know if I've been a part of it. Maybe I have. But to be down 18, 19, 20, whatever we were down, and to find a way to come back and win. I mean, I take my hat off to my group. And, you know, Cleveland, they were shooting the ball well. They were turning us over. They were getting the ball in the pocket and taking advantage of us. And we just found a way. We found a group of 5 guys that went out there, ended up getting stops and, you know, scoring the basketball.
I thought they hit some really tough shots in that fourth quarter. You know, those 2 threes, prayer threes, end of shot clock. I think we got a little unlucky, quite honestly. You know, Brunson obviously took over at the end, and, you know, we started double teaming them and try to do some different things. But listen, I'm super proud of the way our group played. We played great basketball tonight for, you know, 3 quarters. You know, unfortunately, fourth quarter, you know, they dominated us in the fourth quarter.
That is a fair way to put it. Dominating in the end. Meanwhile, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, they get the Knicks to a Game-1 victory in overtime. Here they were post-game talking about that special feeling.
For all 3 of you, can you talk about what it was like to be a part of what seemed like a May miracle at the Garden?
I mean, you know, it's always special when you give your fans something to cheer for. And for us to, you know, it's been a tough go-around for them for the first 3 quarters of the game. And for us to come in that huddle and, you know, with the energy of the fans and the fans really showing us so much love and support to give them something to cheer for in the fourth, it's always an honor. It's a privilege to be able to do. And this team, all we want to do is make the city proud and bring the city wins. And to be able to accomplish that tonight in a night where it didn't seem like it was going to happen is an honor, and it's truly something special.
And Gilbert McGregor will be along to preview Western Conference Game 2 coming up in just a few minutes. Meanwhile, a big surprise. Mason Miller apparently is human. The Dodgers beat him yesterday. They came back in the ninth to win 5-4. Andy Pajes hit a sacrifice fly off Miller to beat the Dodgers. And Manny Machado hit a homer. So did Miguel Andujar. So that was picking up the natural slack here offensively. Here is Dave Roberts on Pajes' sack fly, not slack, but sack fly to beat all-world closer Miller.
I think the work, that he's put in, I think kind of showed itself right there. But I think at the end of the day, it was just fight. It was just will, determination, and, that's why, for me, it's just kind of the compete and not worrying about mechanics and, this and that. It's just me versus you. And it was him versus Mason Miller, and he wasn't going to lose that battle. And Mason's the best in the game right now. And, Andy he willed himself to do something productive in that at bat.
All right, another big story in baseball has to be the red-hot Tampa Bay Rays. Does this team ever lose? I mean, almost never. They beat Baltimore 4-1. They're 32-15 on the season, 17 games above 500, and have won 8 straight series. Richie Palacios 1 for 3 with a base hit, and the Rays are clicking, says Palacios.
8 straight series win, 17 games over 500, 12-2 against your division, Richie. What's allowed this group to click so well?
We just been grinding, man. We're working and we're pulling for each other. We love each other, putting good at-bats together. Our arms are doing well. Everybody's doing amazing. So we got to stick with it.
Rays are playing good baseball. So are the Brewers. They beat the Cubs again. Chicago has now lost 4 straight games. Brewers win as road favorites. Jake Mizorowski, 6 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts. He's now up to 24 1/3 scoreless innings. And the Cubs are needing a reset, says Ian Happ.
Yeah, no, I think every year has periods like that. I do think that, if we had the same record we had today, but we just won every single series, it would feel a little bit different, a little bit more consistent. And, there's pros and cons to, winning 10 straight twice and, having the record we have. But I think when you reflect on the whole thing, we're, whatever it is, 12 games over 500 or something like that, and sitting in a good spot. If you would have told us this was going to be our record at this point in the season, I think everybody would have signed up for it. So move on from here and attack tomorrow.
And meanwhile, the A's can't be stopped. Still in first place out west. They beat the Angels 14-6. Nick Kurtz had 3 hits and 5 runs driven in. The Phillies, meanwhile, lost to the Reds by a final of 4-1. It's been all Chase Burns this season. He's been the de facto ace of Cincinnati, 6 innings pitched and 9 strikeouts. Here is Terry Francona on his de facto ace, Burns, in the month of May.
Some days where we've been kind of up against it, and he's gone out there and given us what we needed. Or, he's been really good. He's a young, a lot like Sal. He's good, he's young, and he's learning fast, and we appreciate that.
Stanley Cup Western Conference Finals also continue tonight. It will be Las Vegas and Colorado as they begin Game 1. Naturally, everyone excited to see how the Montreal Habs do in the Eastern Conference Finals, which I believe begins tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on the show. When we come back next, Gilbert McGregor will join us courtesy of Sporting News. We'll break down the NBA game last night and ask Gilbert straight up, was this the best game of the playoffs? We'll also preview Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. You're watching NewsWire here on SportsGrid on this Wednesday. We'll take a quick time out, and we'll be back with more right after this, so stay on the grid.
The UIM Formula One World Championship Series. We are over the moon excited about the upcoming season.
Let's go.
10,000 horsepower roars off the dock. Oh my, there's a problem. On the outside, side by side.
And he's lost control of the book.
Hopes and dreams of winning here.
Yes!
Get ready for round one, the Regione Sardegna Grand Prix of Italy, May 29th to 31st.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all four.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Always great to catch up with Gilbert McGregor from Phoenix Sports, and he covers the Suns for them and does a lot of live streaming and YouTube videos. And when the Suns are not in action, it's time to cover the rest of the NBA. So let's check in with Gilbert. Gilbert, great to catch up with you here on the show. And so let me ask you the question that I posed just before we went to the break. Was this the best NBA game in the playoffs this season with the Knicks coming back to beat the Cavs in overtime yesterday?
It was a really good one. I know that's some tough competition for the game the night before, though, because that double overtime game between the Spurs and Thunder is right up there. But the fact that we got this level of competition and back-to-back nights, I think I saw something first time ever, I believe, that the game one of the Eastern and Western Conference Finals both go into overtime. So as a basketball fan, I have no complaints about it. But it would either be last night's game or the game that we saw Monday night.
I think that's fair. And what did you make of just the Knicks' well-rounded effort here? I know in the end, Brunson's always going to be the one that's going to carry the Knicks over the top, but it seemed like everybody was getting involved there in overtime in the fourth quarter.
Definitely a team effort. When you come back from 22 down in the fourth quarter, it does require everybody, and obviously demoralizing for the Cavaliers. But talk about the Knicks, and this is something that they did last year in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics. This is a team who, it's part of their DNA. They don't quit. They don't say die. Jalen Brunson being the head of the snake, a guy that you follow his lead, but executing defensively, doing what you want to do offensively. They made no secret that they were trying to find James Harden on that end of the floor, and they stuck with it. Things started going well for them. Things started going bad for the Cavaliers, and they ended up on top.
And Kenny Atkinson defending Harden after the game, saying he's going to be out there for the next game no matter what. So don't even think anything otherwise. The Knicks are now huge favorites, by the way, to win the series. Minus 390 after that win yesterday. And I guess the factor that you would think is this demoralizing, as you said? Is this going to potentially put the Cavs on ice here? But if you look at Thursday's game, the odds are telling us basically this could be a very similar outcome. Knicks minus 6.5, total 215.5. So slight change there, as you see on the total. But I think what makes it interesting, Gilbert, is that the Knicks didn't have that offensive explosion like they had in the end of the regular season and into the playoffs until the end of the game. So maybe the Cavs are just close. They just couldn't put them away, I thought, yesterday.
It definitely brings up the whole argument of rest versus rust. Obviously, the Knicks sweeping 76ers, having some time to get back and get healthy with respect to OG Anunoby, but they hadn't played basketball in a while. And the Cavs had that Game 7 win on Sunday, which was a dominant game. I think they were able to ride that momentum and take that through. And what they showed in the first half of last night's game, even up to the point where they built that 22-point lead in the fourth quarter. So I'm curious to see how that resets as they have a game or a day off in between games to prepare for one another. Now that the Knicks kind of find that momentum that they use to close the game, do the Cavs recognize that, hey, we can find some success against this team. We've done it already. We can do that again. I do think these teams will be somewhat evenly matched, but I just think so much of the Knicks and what they have done and the team that they've built. And they're guys on the Cavs I don't necessarily trust all the way, and we saw exactly why yesterday.
Agreed. Yep, fair enough. All right, so I think a lot of people saw this coming, actually, game one, with the Spurs beating the Thunder, because, I mean, maybe they just simply have their number. But what's funny, Gilbert, is that I see people saying that the Spurs are going to win again tonight. I don't know if you feel the same way. The Thunder are 6.5-point favorites, total 216.5. It feels like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP of the league, but they've run into an absolute freight train with Victor Wembanyama, who's arguably playing as well as any NBA Finals MVP has played through one game, albeit through one game. If Wemby plays this well, Gilbert, the Spurs are going to win the NBA championship. I mean, at this kind of level, when a player gets there, I mean, this is like Dirk, this is like LeBron, Dwayne Wade, like winning championships, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. I mean, we are having that conversation right now.
And it's crazy we're having that conversation. He's 22 years old, which is pretty incredible. But it's hard to argue with that, Craig. This is a guy who we're seeing play like the best player in the world. It's either him or Shai, depending on who you ask. And we talk so much about the Thunder being a team that feel inevitable. Doesn't matter what you do, how well you play, what goes right for you or what goes wrong for them. They always have a chance. Well, Victor Wembanyama feels like an inevitable player, and that's what we saw in game one. Every time the Thunder bounced back and took a lead or whatever it was, they ran into Victor Wembanyama, 41 points, 24 rebounds, no answer for him offensively or defensively. You talk about Shai not necessarily having his best game. A lot of that had to do with the presence of Victor Wembanyama defensively. Chet Holmgren did not have his best game, did not play like an all-star or the all-star that he is or supposed to be, because Victor Wembanyama takes that matchup personally. So when he's focused like that, which is crazy to say for a guy in his third season at 22 years old, they can reach those heights. And they have had Oklahoma City's number this season. They're 5-1 against the Thunder now.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Gilbert. So this is it. This is the last chance that you'll ever get OKC at this point of the playoffs is plus money to win the championship, because if they win tonight, it's back to minus the rest of the playoffs. Plus 120 to win the NBA championship. Are you going to get off OKC, Gilbert, or are you staying on here and doubling down on the plus?
I still trust Oklahoma City. This feels similar to where they were last year, albeit a round earlier, but they lost that game one to the Nuggets, and it was a disastrous loss. Aaron Gordon had that game winner, and a lot of people had a lot of questions about the Thunder and how they matched up and if they were going to have enough to deal with Nikola Jokic. Now it's a different international center, a different MVP candidate that they're dealing with, a different way to lose down the stretch. But we saw that series go 7 games, but Oklahoma City ultimately just had enough. They had more than what the Nuggets had. I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to outlast the San Antonio Spurs in this series. The Thunder did play well, but Jalen Williams could have played better. Shai could play much better. AJ Mitchell could play much better. And I don't know how much of that is a credit to the Spurs and what they did defensively, or the Thunder having some rest that they're dealing with after sweeping their first 2 rounds. So I fully expect them to bounce back tonight, and I fully expect them to bounce back in the series, even if the series goes the distance. The Spurs' time is coming, just not yet.
Gilbert, Jason Kidd, generational player in the 90s, very similar to the trajectory sort of Steve Nash, I kind of felt like, and Nash got a head coaching gig, ended up getting let go, and here we are with Kidd. I mean, these are 2 players that we watched, right, in the 90s, watching them grow as players, and then Kidd in particular as a coach. He's going to get paid. He got bought out, but I do have to ask you, Gilbert, does he get another chance?
I think we'll get another chance. 2 guys we saw play at a high level in Phoenix, by the way. But I do think he'll get another chance. I think players like playing for Jason Kidd. Kind of surprised that it happened the way it did, but I guess it makes sense for what the vision that Masai Ujiri has for the Mavericks moving forward. So maybe Portland, maybe Orlando, give him a call. But I'll be curious to see what happens in the future of Jason Kidd on the sideline in the NBA.
Yep, and Dallas will recycle some coach that just got fired like a year ago. That's the way the NBA works. Gilbert, thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Craig.
Brady Cannon up next. All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Brady Cannon is with us. I want to get to the Byron Nelson because this is the shortest odds, I think, in the history of golf to win a tournament. I think this is it. But before we get there, Brady, I'm sure you were watching the PGA Championship, which I know you love so much, but it was no fun for any better when you knew that basically nobody had a shot here. I mean, out of nowhere, Aaron Rai wins the championship. And I mean, I suppose you could pick a top 100 or a top 20 or maybe even a top 10. But I know Smalley was a name that we had talked about a little bit, but never Aaron Rai. So what did you make of this? Is this like an all-time upset, 290-1?
I don't know anybody in the golf handicapping space that did well with the PGA Championship, Craig. Nobody had Aaron Rai. I actually knew a guy that had Alex Smalley, and that didn't come to fruition. I mean, Matty Schmid out of nowhere. I thought the first 3 days were really good. And we go into Sunday and we have this incredible leaderboard with Scheffler and Patrick Reed and John Rahm and all these names just getting ready to pounce. And then all of a sudden, Aaron Rai emerges and, hey, good for him. And, there couldn't have been enough nice things said about Aaron Rai and his work ethic by a lot of his colleagues there on tour. And the guy is one heck of a player. There's no doubt about it. And he went and grabbed the thing by the horns, the last 10 holes, he went out and got it. And so credit to him. But yeah, I was really expecting this fantastic drama on Sunday, and it was a little bit anticlimactic. But hey, on to the Nelson, and congratulations to Aaron Rai.
Yeah, and listen, there's still a couple of majors left. We got the U.S. Open, the British too, and so could make up some ground there, maybe even this week. But this is it. So Scottie Scheffler had a really good, I think, first day at the PGA Championship, maybe second if I'm not mistaken, and then he ended up finishing 14th. But Brady, as long as I've been following this is it. I've never seen this short odds to win any event on the PGA Tour. The Byron Nelson this week has Scottie Scheffler listed at plus 155. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, from looking at the field, that's more of the reason why. Now, let's also note that Scheffler missed a couple earlier in the year, and so maybe that's why he's playing in this one. But when I see Siwoo Kim and Jordan Spieth as the next closest odds, it tells me a lot of guys taking the week off after the PGA.
Yeah, it's definitely a light field. And Scottie's here for a couple of reasons. He's the defending champion. He absolutely torched this golf course last year to the tune of 31 under par and beat Eric Van Rooyen by 8 shots. And, it was so off the charts that they brought in Lanny Watkins and said, all right, we got to redo this golf course. And so we do have a little bit of a new product this year. I think the formula is the same. It's a pretty straightforward, hit the ball a long ways, hit greens in regulation, and it becomes a putting contest. It'll be a birdie fest. The winning score proposition bet at the Westgate Superbook here in Las Vegas this year is under or over 23.5 under par. And the average winning score for the last 5 years here at TPC Craig Ranch has been a little better than 25 under par. So they're adjusting by a couple of strokes for the redesign. But Scottie also being, a resident of the Texas area and having grown up in that area, Jordan Spieth, the same thing. A lot of the local Texas guys will show up and honor these events. But yeah, it's a watered down field. And I went with nothing but long shots, Craig. And it's all basically predicated on Scottie's odds, as you point out, being so low. And then you've got Spieth and Kim at like 15 and Koepka at 25. Everybody after that's like 50-1 or higher. And that's where I really started.
Yeah, and you this is usually when you hit your big one here, Brady, when the field is like this here. So Matty Schmid is the one name that I'm circling here because he played so well this past week. I mean, the odds just seem off here. How is he 80-1? Feels like he should be a 40 or a 50.
Well, if he didn't do what he did last week, then maybe Matty Schmid is typically 80-1 or so. But I thought that was tremendous. And I mentioned that I believe this is going to be a putting contest. Matty Schmid is a really good putter. And oh, by the way, those were bent grass greens last week at Arana Mink, just like we have here at TPC Craig Ranch. And who was number one in that field for strokes gained putting last week? Matty Schmid. So I went with a lot of putters at long odds this week, Craig. We'll see if we can get one.
All right, Brady. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for coming on the show.
You bet. Good to be with you as always.
All right, Brady Cannon with us. Get in on some of his picks for this week. All right, coming up next, the state of Minnesota has banned prediction markets and the CFTC has responded. What are they saying? Sam McQuillan will tell us next. Don't go away. Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. In case you missed it last night, it was a game for the ages in the National Basketball Association as the New York Knicks come all the way back from 20 points down, 22 to be exact, to defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers. The final score last night was 115 to 104. If you went to bed early, you really missed a fantastic finish. So what happened in this one? Of course, partially due to the success of Jalen Brunson. And Brunson, of course, coming through in the big games, had 38 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. Mikal Bridges had 18 points and 5 rebounds. Karl Anthony Towns with a double-double, 13 and 13. Now, on the Cleveland side, Donovan Mitchell had 29 and 5. But the player in particular that came under some criticism was James Harden, who had just 15 points and also struggled on the defensive side of the ball. But first, let's recap the game and hear from the head coaches, Mike Brown and Kenny Atkinson, as the game went into overtime. And somehow, not only did the Knicks win, but they ended up covering the spread. Here's Brown.
I got to give my group credit. They've been resilient all year. And I don't know if I've seen that in a playoff game. I don't know if I've been a part of it. Maybe I have. But to be down 18, 19, 20, whatever we were down, and to find a way to come back and win. I mean, I take my hat off to my group. You know, Cleveland, they were shooting the ball well. They were turning us over. They were getting the ball in the pocket and taking advantage of us. And we just found a way. We found a group of 5 guys that went out there, ended up getting stops and, you know, scoring the basketball.
I thought they hit some really tough shots in that fourth quarter. You know, those 2 threes, prayer threes, end of shot clock. think we got a little unlucky, quite honestly. Brunson obviously took over at the end, and we started double teaming them and try to do some different things. But listen, I'm super proud of the way our group played. We played great basketball tonight for 3 quarters. Unfortunately, fourth quarter, they dominated us in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no doubt the Knicks were lucky to get that win, but they played great at the end of the game. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report with the very latest on sports betting and prediction markets going on across the United States and abroad. Sam, welcome back to the show. Let's get started with the update in Minnesota. Minnesota says no more prediction markets for us. You got to get out. And the response is the CFTC jumping in. So who ends up winning this battle? Will it be the prediction markets or the CFTC? Because a landmark case could be in store.
Yeah, if I had to pick a winner in this battle, Craig, it would probably be the lawyers on both sides, because they're definitely really busy all of these fights between the states, Kalshi, Polymarket, and now the federal agency, which is supposed to oversee these companies. Minnesota passed its law, the first law of its kind, banning prediction markets in the state, including sports event contracts, which have become very popular as sort of an alternate method of wagering, especially in states like Minnesota, where sports betting is not legal yet. And Minnesota passed this law effectively banning those platforms from the state. The CFTC responded just 1 day later, filing a lawsuit to block the state from doing that. They called it a flagrant and unprecedented incursion into their regulatory authority. The CFTC has maintained that these sports prediction markets are, in fact, not sports betting, but financial derivatives, which they are supposed to regulate under law. The states don't want these products in their states. So this is what's happening now. You have 6 lawsuits between the CFTC and Minnesota. Whether or not there'll be a winner in that lawsuit anytime soon remains to be seen. It's one of a number of not even those lawsuits, but you also have Kalshi and Polymarket and Robinhood with their lawsuits as well. You've had about 20 states in total kind of take action. So these lawsuits could take a long time to play out. It's believed by many that ultimately the Supreme Court will have to decide on this matter, whether or not these are indeed financial trading instruments or these are actually sports betting products, which the state should be free to govern. So that's the heart of the issue right here. The CFTC certainly has had spent a lot of energy defending its right to oversee these products. We are still yet to see any formal rules from the CFTC actually governing what these products can do. You've had several leagues like the NFL, the NBA, the MLB asking for similar style to sportsbook protections to make sure that you can't offer markets on problematic things like officiating or injury decisions. So it's just kind of another development in this crazy saga we've been talking about now for over a year. And we'll see, when push comes to shove in these courts, but it could take a while before we have any actual real winners and losers and rulings in this whole thing.
Read more at LegalSportsReport.com, including this next story that Sam and I are going to break down, which is quite frankly a surprising one to me. If you think back in terms of sports betting before it was legalized, imagine one of these offshore books, Sam, saying, well, your player got hurt, you can have the money back. And so here we are with potentially the state of New York saying, yeah, that's the way that you should operate. A player gets hurt, you got to void the bet. I am stunned, Sam, to hear this happening, because it sort of, makes it possible for a lot of people to probably place more haphazard bets. And if something ends up happening, they're going to be like, well, I know that I don't have to take a loss here. I am surprised.
Yeah, it's a very surprising bill to pop out of also a surprising state like New York. Whenever they pass a bill or really pay attention to anything in sports betting, other states tend to notice as well. So I'm also surprised, Craig, to see this bill, which would create a formal fair play policy for all sports books to follow in the state, agreeing on situations where bets either have to be adjusted, refunded, or voided, it includes injuries, but is not limited to it. It could also include whether a player is a late scratch in a game, whether the sporting event itself is canceled or suspended, and dealing with statistical errors and stat corrections. Sometimes someone is awarded a rebound who didn't actually get the rebound, or an assist counts as an assist that shouldn't have, those sorts of things. And, sportsbooks already have their house rules, which they write themselves, get approved by the state, and they're required to follow in case any of these kind of situations happen. So it seems like this bill would just create kind of another layer of universal protections that all sports books agree to in the state. But it is very, it's a far departure from the days of, sports books pushing the idea that, if a player gets injured and you took the over on their bet, that's just kind of part of the risk or part of the risk you assume when placing that bet. We've certainly seen, as sports betting grows, a lot of people pushing for or advocating for the bets to get refunded when injuries happen. And we've even seen some sports books, create their own injury policies where your bet will get refunded if a player gets hurt in the first quarter, or other sports books offer, injury insurance, those sort of things as more of promotional kind of ventures. But now you have a state actually focusing on making this part of its law and pushing it on the sports books themselves. So it's not too concrete in how it's developed right now. It's kind of, very, a vague outline of how it would work. So I'm really interested to see how it might develop more throughout, the legislative process in New York, which certainly has a lot of other things on its plate right now. So very interesting that this is one of them.
Sam, let's close it out here with this new potential act called the Game Act, which prohibits social media companies and websites from targeting minors with sports betting ads. Naturally makes a lot of sense here, but can they push something like this through?
Yeah, that's the big question. We've had a number of laws like this proposed in Congress on a national level to restrict, to better safeguard sports betting, especially advertising towards minors, which is a big concern. Those bills have not really gone anywhere so far. It's been largely messaging actions. This bill would make it illegal for a sports book or a social media company or website to target anyone under the age of 18 with a sports betting ad. How that's actually going to be enforced is a big question, which probably goes into whether or not this will actually get passed. Under the law, the Federal Trade Commission would be tasked with regulating this and overseeing this, but it's kind of hard to tell how they would figure out if an ad was specifically targeted to a minor or not. But hopefully we get some more details as the bill keeps developing through the process. And if it doesn't, it's just another one of those big, messaging platforms on a really important topic right now. So we'll keep watching and monitoring. And
all right, Sam, you're wearing blue, I see, for your Knicks. Good job there. We'll catch up again. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Dustin Gawker up next.
The UIM Formula One World Championship Series. We are over the moon excited about the upcoming season.
Let's go.
10,000 horsepower roars off the dock. Oh my, there's a problem. On the outside, side by side.
And he's lost control of the book.
Hopes and dreams of winning here.
Yes!
Get ready for round one, the Regione Sardegna Grand Prix of Italy, May 29th to 31st.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all four.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
Dustin Gawker is with us. Of course, you can catch his Substack and certainly all of his podcasts and appearances on different networks like CNN Talking Prediction Markets as he covers them. Dustin, great to have you back here on NewsWire. My understanding is there was a sports betting and prediction market hearing this morning. So tell us more about the Senate and certainly if there was anything that you learned from it, which seems to be a lot of people feel one way, a lot of people feel another way, and then we just keep moving on with prediction markets being alive.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much we learned from it, but it is interesting. Senate Commerce Committee, one of their subcommittees, held a hearing just this morning, just wrapped up a little, like half an hour or so ago, called No Sure Bets, Protecting Sports Integrity in America. Now, that sounds a lot like a hearing that's going to be about sports betting, right? And it was, and it is about integrity, but most of that hearing was spent talking about prediction markets and how some of the members of the Senate who are on this committee don't really like prediction markets and what's happening with them. That was, I'd say, the overarching theme of this hearing that was going on. And most of the members seem not to like it, right? That is, we saw Senator Ted Cruz kind of equate prediction markets to sports betting. We had folks from Nevada, New Mexico, states that do not like prediction markets, kind of usurping their sports betting industries. They were pretty negative on prediction markets. So the most interesting data point is just that the senators are interested in this topic. The answers we heard from the American Gaming Association, we heard from the Coalition for Prediction Markets, and other folks, and not to dismiss what these people say, but we've heard these answers before. They talk about these things. I know the answers before they give them, and that's interesting. But again, the most interesting data point is that senators are talking about this and very concerned about prediction markets in a way that they weren't 3 to 4 months ago. So I listened to this hearing, and the question is, does this become more than just chatter? There's people like to talk about things on Capitol Hill. Does this turn into something meaningful? The Senate has passed a resolution banning senators and their staff from trading on prediction markets, but does all this negative energy and kind of desire to rein all this in, does that turn into material action by the Senate, by Congress? I'm pretty skeptical of that, as always, but again, if we were handicapping this, I would have said no chance, like heading into 2026, and now the Senate and a lot of members of Congress are very interested in this topic, so we'll have to wait and see what becomes of this, but this Senate hearing is a step along that path.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see. All right, so Kalshi apparently has joined the NCPG to become the first financial services and trading category member to advance trader health and safety. But hold on here. I thought that this was for the gaming companies.
Gambling's there in the name, right? It's part of what the National Council on Problem Gambling does, but Kalshi has found a way to thread the needle to be involved and try to be proactive, and I'd applaud this, right? Kalshi and prediction markets have tried to avoid the gambling moniker as much as possible for legal reasons we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, but they're embracing it and saying, you know what, these things can be addictive, even if it's not quote unquote gambling in the traditional sense, that we should be working on this. So they made a donation of $2 million to the NCPG. They've created a new this new category about financial services, and again, good. Let's do that, because just saying this isn't gambling is not sustainable. Right. It's going up to the line, right? It's not saying it's gambling, but it's partnering with a group whose goal is to help people with problem gambling, right? So I'm not, like, people will poo-poo this, but I'm going to say this is good. Kalshi has been resistant, but is trying to do something. It would be great if we just said it's gambling and we're able to admit that, but short of that, I'm not going to say that being involved with the NCPG is a bad thing. So I hope other prediction markets do that. I hope everybody kind of realizes there's harm that can come from this, and that we do something about it and not just kind of wash it away and say, oh, it's just like the stock market, it's investing. It's not those things. It is, the number that we repeat all the time, 85 to 90% right now of activity at prediction markets is on sports event contracts, basically sports betting. And, that there's harm that comes with that, and acknowledging that and dealing with that reality, I think is a really important step.
All right, Dustin, story of the week in sports media, without a doubt. Sports Illustrated, which has certainly undergone some transformations beyond what we could have imagined 5-10 years ago, apparently deleted a writer's profile over some AI plagiarism, which was just crazy. When I read the story, I actually had to read it twice. So tell people exactly what happened here. And as you can see, the accountability seems to be zero, right? At this point, like it's just media, it just goes away.
Yeah, it's weird. And so this intersects with prediction markets because, there's this great story by Dan Bernstein over at Sportico about how much activity is going on at Kalshi really around parlays. And he spent a lot of time doing this. He dug into data. This is not publicly available stuff. It came from a lot of research. The data is public, but it's hard to get to. So like his story needs to be cited and linked anytime you are doing this. You can't just say, this is out there. So anyway, SI, which has been standing up this prediction markets vertical in terms of content, basically just wrote a whole story about parlays at Kalshi and doesn't at all acknowledge Dan's work, doesn't link to it, doesn't do anything. And then everybody Dan sees this, I see this because we follow everything that's going on in prediction markets world. And we're like, what the heck is going on here? You gotta cite Dan's work. And so the story goes away. The author's profile disappears, and this becomes a media story now instead of a prediction market story, which is fascinating. Awful announcing, a lot of other futurism. Sure. A lot of other outlets pick this up, and this is part of the downfall, I guess, of SI is that it used to be a trusted brand, and now it just publishes stuff without citing links and doing all that, which is just terrible for journalism in general. And you and I, who grew up with Sports Illustrated being the end boss of sports journalism, is now reduced to this, to publishing stuff and not editing it and just ripping people off, and it's kind of a shame.
It is. All right, let's get to an interesting prediction here for Kalshi, Dustin, as we close it out.
Yeah, we can bet on the weather, right? Craig, is it going to be, how hot is it going to be in Miami? I'm going to place a bet on this right now on Kalshi.
86.
86. 63% of people think it's going to be between 88 and 89 degrees tomorrow. You can bet on lots of weather at prediction markets in lots of major metropolitan areas. We talked about the one in France where somebody was trying to get over on Polymarket. But if you want to bet on something other than sports, you can bet on the weather. It's good fun.
There you go. I'm glad the Marlins have a dome. 86 would not work well for this forehead here. Thanks again, Dustin. I appreciate it. Have a good week. Thanks again.
Cheers, Craig.
All right, we'll be right back. Don't go away. More NewsWire coming up after this with Last Licks.
World Championship Series. We are over the moon excited about the upcoming season.
Let's go.
10,000 horsepower roars off the dock. Oh my, there's a problem. On the outside, side by side.
He's lost control of the book.
Hopes and dreams of winning here.
Yes!
Get ready for round one, the Regione Sardegna Grand Prix of Italy, May 29th to 31st.
You can recruit super young talent that may go in the NBA. You can recruit older guys and have them grow up together. But if you want players to stay, either sign them to contracts or treat them well enough where they're going to stay. To me, it's pretty simple. And, a lot of coaches last year had good years and they left skid marks on their schools and nobody said a word.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
They're trading right now currently at 74 wins on the season, which means the Kalshi marketplace goes by 5-win intervals. 75-plus wins for those Houston Astros. That's a 49% contract to the yes, which a $100 investment pays back $205, Greg. I'm not high on this team. Look, again, 75 wins for the Astros is terrible, but this team might not even look the same as where we stand today by the time we get to that deadline.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You know, this time of the year, we sort of get these little NFL drops about the future. We got one yesterday. I think this is a bit of a surprise, to be honest. The city of Nashville has been awarded the Super Bowl in February of 2030, and it was approved 32-zip by the owners, which does make sense because they're getting a new stadium that's going to open up in a couple of years. But remember, this is one of those situations where could get a cold weather Super Bowl. Chris, this is not a dome, right? They do not have a dome, I don't think, in Nashville. I don't think they're building one there. So, yeah, so this could be one of those. I mean, listen, the New York one actually worked out well. I think it was in the 40s or 50s. So we'll see if this ends up being a good one. Now, the upcoming Super Bowls, of course, we have the big one in Los Angeles, and then we have Atlanta in 2028. And then Las Vegas in 2029. But keep an eye on that one in Nashville, especially, and see what the weather is, because we could get our coldest weather Super Bowl since we had that New York one. And by the way, it wasn't that bad in New York as well. All right, so how about fantasy football? Speaking of which, imagine finishing in last place and having to go to a Major League Baseball stadium and be embarrassed. That's exactly what happened at this Royals game yesterday. Check it out.
You think you lost a bet and got embarrassed. How about this guy?
It's fantastic. He was all by himself. I don't know what he's wearing, but
they told him you got.
That's a really good punishment for finishing last in fantasy football and not winning a championship, having to go there and sit there. And by the way, sit in the upper deck, no less. Maybe it's even more embarrassing because the Royals are playing so bad. Have to go to a Royals game too. Yikes. I shouldn't take shots at the Royals. All right, let's wrap it up. Time now for some last licks. Okay, World Cup madness, folks. We are getting closer and closer. A couple of weeks away. Domino's is giving out $1 million worth of free pizzas. They announced yesterday that they're giving away $1 million worth of emergency pizzas every time a member of the U.S. men's national team gets a red card in a World Cup match. They give away a free pizza. How about that? To enter, fans sign up online at Domino's website and join Domino's Rewards. The pizza company then will select 60,000 people to receive a free medium 2-topping pizza when that penalty is called. Now, here's the kicker. How many players in the history of Team USA do you think have ever gotten red cards? 3. So the promotion is good. It gets suckers like us to bring it up here on the show and suckers like Chris to use it in the show. But the reality is nobody's getting a red card. You're going to have to buy pizza from Domino's this summer because 3 in history tells you that this generally does not happen. Okay, let's get to former NBA player Ben Simmons. Remember good Ben Simmons? Remember him? How about Ben Simmons getting a ring, but not in basketball? Ben and the South Florida Sails, I don't even know what that is, by the way, and I live here, captured the 2026 Walker's Cay Open in the Bahamas, the second stop of the Sport Fishing Championship season. So Ben has got himself into some fishing. The Sport Fishing Championship, by the way, features 16 professional teams competing across North America through a points-based format that spans 6 stops and 12 tournaments before concluding with the Zane Grey playoffs. Now, certainly I've never heard of this, but I have heard of Ben Simmons. And unfortunately, this is a guy that was off to such a tremendous start in his career. For those of you unfamiliar, just completely feels like his career just collapsed, like out of nowhere. I don't know if it was mental or physical or what. I know he had a bad back for a long period of time. I am happy to see that Ben Simmons succeeding at something that he loves to do. So we'll turn that negative into a positive today. Finally, this is a negative. I don't know if it's a positive. You're going to have to decide for yourself. You know who that guy is right there? You may not recognize him. That is Joey Chestnut of hot dog eating fame. I had no idea that he pled guilty in April to a misdemeanor battery charge. Joey, what are you doing? He got 180 days of probation after getting involved in a bar altercation. But I guess what happened was his lawyers realized we got to get him in court quick, because he's got a hot dog contest to eat, and that will be on July 4th. So since he's got 180 days of probation, he will only be on probation and will be allowed to participate in July 4th's Nathan hot dog eating contest. and defend his title. He had been previously granted a petition to travel outside the state of Indiana where the altercation took place. So Joey Chestnut will have another shot at eating all those hot dogs again. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks to Tommy and Frank, and of course for my producer Chris, I'm Craig Mish. Great to be back with you here on the Wednesday edition of the show. I'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition of the show as well, and I will see you then.
The UIM Formula One World Championship Series. We are over the moon excited about the upcoming season.
Let's go.
10,000 horsepower roars off the dock. Oh my, there's a problem. On the outside, side by side.
And he's lost control of the bus.
Hopes and dreams of winning here.
Yes!
Get ready for round one, the Regione Sardegna Grand Prix of Italy, May 29th to 31st.
You can recruit super young talent that may go in the NBA. You can recruit older guys and have them grow up together. But if you want players to stay, either sign them to contracts or treat them well enough where they're going to stay. To me, it's pretty simple. And, you know, a lot of coaches last year had good years and they left skid marks on their schools and nobody said a word.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
They're trading right now currently at 74 wins on the season, which means the Kalshi marketplace goes by 5-win intervals. 75-plus wins for those Houston Astros. That's a 49% contract to the yes, which a $100 investment pays back $205, Craig. I'm not high on this team. Look, again, 75 wins for the Astros is terrible, but this team might not even look the same as where we stand today by the time we get to that deadline.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.